Su Kai's last words to Yu Menglong's mother, a whisper that shook the silence. The hall was almost empty when Su Kai stood before Yu Menglong's grieving mother. Heavy curtains blocked out most of the daylight, leaving only fractured beams of gold on the polished floor. The air felt thick, like it had absorbed every sigh, every tear, every unspoken confession since Yu Menglong's death. This was no ordinary condolence visit. This was a moment soaked in tension, mystery, and pain, a meeting of two broken souls united by loss, but divided by secrets that had been too dangerous to speak aloud. Su Kai had always been known for his composure, even in the most chaotic filming schedules, even when controversy swirled around him. He was the calm at the center. But that day, something about him was different. His eyes were dim yet restless, like storms brewing under still waters. He carried no entourage, no cameras. Only a small bouquet of white lilies trembled in his hand. Lilies, Yu Menglong's favorite. As he crossed the threshold into the sitting room where Menglong's mother sat, he looked like a man who had already walked through fire and knew there was another waiting for him. Yu Menglong's mother had aged years and days. Her hands clutched a framed photograph of her son, and her lips moved silently as though she were praying, or maybe talking to him. She looked up when Su Kai approached. There was no smile, no greeting, just a long, heavy silence that filled the room between them. The world outside went on, but in that little pocket of grief, time seemed to hold its breath. Su Kai knelt before her. He placed the lilies at her feet and stayed there, his head slightly bowed. It wasn't the posture of a celebrity visiting a fan's family. It was a man kneeling in guilt, in reverence, in confession. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, hoarse, as though every word scraped his throat raw. "I'm sorry," he began. "I'm so sorry. I couldn't protect him. None of us could." Menglong's mother didn't move, didn't blink. She just stared at him with eyes that were both empty and burning, like all her grief had been distilled into something beyond tears. Su Kai drew a trembling breath. He had rehearsed this moment perhaps 100 times, but now that it was here, words slipped through his fingers like sand. "You have to know," he continued. He wasn't alone. He was scared, but he wasn't alone. He was brave. He tried to fight back, but his voice cracked. There were things happening behind the scenes, things none of us could talk about. We were warned, threatened. I thought if I stayed silent, I could protect him. But silence! His hands clenched against his knees. Silence killed him. Menglong's mother finally spoke, her voice like paper tearing. "Then why are you here?" she asked. "Why come now? If you knew, why didn't you save my son?" The question sliced through the air. Su Kai flinched, but met her gaze. In his eyes, something glimmered, a mix of shame, rage, and the unbearable weight of a secret he'd carried too long. "Because I have to tell you the truth," he whispered, "before they come for me too." Her hands tightened around the photograph, knuckles white. "Who?" she demanded. "Who are they?" Su Kai shook his head, tears spilling down his cheeks. "If I say their names, it won't be you who pays. It'll be someone else you love. They've already taken one son from you. I can't let them take more." He paused, then leaned closer, his words trembling on the edge of a sob. "But he left something. Something for you. A message. He wanted you to know he never gave up. He wanted you to know it wasn't his choice. That's why I'm here. To tell you he loved you. To tell you—" His voice broke entirely, and for a moment the room was filled only with the sound of a grown man's quiet, ragged crying. Menglong's mother reached out, almost without realizing it, and touched his shoulder. "Tell me what?" she asked softly. Su Kai lifted his face. In that moment, the polished image of the handsome actor was gone. Only a haunted man remained. He said. Su Kai choked out, "Don't let them bury the truth with me." Those were his last words to me before they... His voice dissolved again. The room seemed to tilt under the weight of it. Menglong's mother's lips trembled. "And you?" she asked. What will you do? He gave a bitter, broken smile. I don't think I have long. They're already watching me. I just wanted you to hear this from me, not from some article or some leak. I needed you to know your son was a fighter, not a victim. He wanted justice. He wanted light. And I'm sorry I wasn't brave enough to give it to him while he was alive. Her tears finally came then, silently streaking down her face. For a moment, she wasn't a bereaved mother, and he wasn't a famous actor. They were just two people bound by loss, trying to find meaning in a nightmare that had no ending. Sukai reached into his coat pocket and took out a small flash drive. He pressed it into her palm. This is all I have, he said. Proof. Messages. Everything. Don't show it yet. Wait. There are still people who can help. She looked at the flash drive as though it were a live coal. And you, she whispered. I'll be gone before the week is over, he murmured. Maybe not physically at first, but they'll break me, or they'll make it look like I did it to myself, like they did with him. Her eyes widened in horror. Don't talk like that, she pleaded. You can't. I have to, he said. I've already crossed the line by coming here. Then, as though time itself cracked, he leaned closer and whispered a sentence in her ear. No one else heard it. No cameras, no recordings. Only she knew the words. But whatever he said, it turned her pale. She gasped and clutched the flash drive to her chest. Why are you telling me this? She asked, her voice trembling. Because, Sukai said, standing slowly, if they take me next, you'll know why. And then he was gone. No entourage, no public statement. He left the lilies behind on the floor, their white petals trembling as the door closed. Menglong's mother sat alone, her hand shaking, the flash drive burning like ice in her palm. She had no way of knowing that would be the last time she saw Sukai alive. Hours turned into days. Rumors began to swirl online. Paparazzi caught glimpses of Sukai looking thinner, distracted, as though carrying a ghost around his shoulders. Friends said he'd grown paranoid, checking his phone constantly, avoiding certain calls. Yet, he still smiled for the cameras, still delivered lines on set, still posted messages to his fans. Only in private did the cracks show. When the news broke, Sukai dead in apparent suicide, the world recoiled. Hashtags exploded across social media. Fans refused to believe it. Comment sections flooded with disbelief, grief, and fury. He was too strong for this, one wrote. Something's not right. Others pointed to cryptic posts he'd made in the days before his death. They're closing in, he'd written in one story. If anything happens to me, remember what I said. Menglong's mother sat alone again, clutching the same flash drive. The words he had whispered that day echoed in her mind like a curse. Could that be why they set him up too? Was his death just another link in a chain meant to bury the truth forever? She looked at the flash drive and felt the weight of it. Inside was proof, she was sure of it now. The silence after Sukai's departure clung to the room, like smoke that refused to clear. Menglong's mother sat frozen, her hand still wrapped around the tiny flash drive he had placed in her palm. She could still feel the faint warmth of his fingers on it, as though he had pressed a part of his soul into the device before walking out of her life forever. His last words circled in her ears like an echo she couldn't escape. If they take me next, you'll know why. At first, she didn't dare move. The air seemed heavy with ghosts, as if both her son and Sukai's spirit lingered there together. The bouquet of lilies on the floor seemed too alive, too white against the darkness of her grief. She reached down and touched the petals with trembling fingers. Their softness reminded her painfully of Menglong's childhood, when he used to pick flowers for her and place them clumsily in a glass jar on the kitchen counter. Now flowers were only symbols of death. The flash drive dug into her palm, almost demanding attention. What could be inside? Proof, Sukai had said. Messages. Everything. Proof of what? She tried to imagine her son's voice recorded, his handwriting scanned, his fears captured in digital fragments. The thought was unbearable and yet irresistible. She wanted to know. She had to know. But fear crawled up her spine like ice water. Su-kai had warned her. If she opened it too soon, she might bring danger upon herself, or worse, upon others. She pressed it to her chest and whispered, "My boy, what did they do to you?" That night, sleep refused her. She kept replaying Su-kai's face in her mind, the way his tears had fallen unguarded, the way his voice had broken when he confessed his guilt. This wasn't the Su-kai the world knew, the confident, golden actor adored on screens. No, this was a man carrying chains around his heart, crushed by secrets too heavy to bear. And then there were his whispered words, the ones no one else had heard, words that had drained the color from her face, words that only deepened the pit of dread in her soul. The next morning, the world outside her window buzzed with chaos. News of Su-kai's death had broken. The headlines were merciless. Su-kai found dead in apparent suicide. Paparazzi swarmed. Fans cried in disbelief. Hashtags stormed the internet. Hashtag justice for Su-kai. Hashtag gone too soon. Hashtag protect the truth. But beneath the waves of mourning, whispers of suspicion grew louder. Too many deaths. Too many coincidences. Menglong's mother felt her chest tighten as she read the comments. Some fans recalled his strange posts in the days before his death. They're closing in. Silence kills. Remember what I said. She shivered. He had been trying to warn them, to warn everyone, just as he had warned her. And then, unbidden, she remembered how he had leaned close before leaving her home. His whisper, hot against her ear, had pierced her like a knife. It wasn't just him they wanted. It's all of us. He was the first. I might be next. But they won't stop until the truth is ashes. The words haunted her, each one dripping with doom. Who were they? What kind of power had the ability to silence not one but two rising stars? Days passed in a blur of grief and paranoia. She kept the flash drive hidden in a small jewelry box beneath her late husband's Bible, as though the holy book could protect it from whatever evils it carried. Sometimes, late at night, she would take it out and stare at it, her fingers itching to know its contents. But Su-kai's warning echoed in her mind. Wait, there are still people who can help. Who could help? Who was strong enough to fight against an invisible hand that had already stolen 2 young lives? Her thoughts often wandered back to Su-kai's visit, the scene replayed in fragments, his bowed head, his voice cracking, the lilies trembling as he set them down. But most vivid of all was the look in his eyes, a mixture of despair and defiance. It was as though he had already accepted his fate, but was determined to leave behind one thread of truth, one torch that could light the darkness if someone dared to carry it. And now that torch was in her hands. Sometimes, when the grief became too much, she would close her eyes and imagine her son and Su-kai together. She pictured them sitting side by side, laughing, planning their futures, dreaming of roles yet to play. She imagined them whispering in the dark about their fears, swearing to protect each other no matter what. The thought cut her deeply because in the end, neither of them had been protected. One evening, as rain lashed against the windows, she found herself speaking aloud to the empty room. Why did you come to me, Su-kai? Why not someone stronger? Someone who could fight? I am only a mother, a tired, broken mother. But then she remembered how he had looked at her, how he had spoken not just as a celebrity, not even as a friend, but as a man desperate to be understood. He had trusted her, not the press, not the police, not the agencies, her, because maybe he knew that a mother's love was the one thing they couldn't silence. Her resolve began to harden. She realized Su-kai's visit hadn't been an accident or a moment of weakness. It had been a passing of the torch. He knew his time was short, and he needed someone who would not only hear his last words, but carry them. The whispers of conspiracy grew louder in the public. Fans started connecting dots between Menglong's tragic death and Su-kai's sudden passing. Online forums buzzed with theories. He was silenced because he knew too much. They made it look like suicide. Check the connections. It's all there if you dig deep enough. She scrolled through these posts with trembling hands. People were searching for the truth, but none of them had the proof. She did, and that knowledge weighed heavier with every passing day. One night, as the clock struck midnight, she finally inserted the flash drive into her old laptop. Her heart pounded as the screen lit up. A folder appeared, labeled simply, "For her eyes only." She hesitated, Sukai's warning hammering in her mind. But she clicked anyway. The folder opened to dozens of files, audio recordings, text messages, screenshots. Her breath caught. The first recording was of her son's voice, shaky, tired, but determined. "Mom, if you ever hear this, know that I love you. I didn't want to go. They pushed me. Please don't believe what they'll say about me." Tears streamed down her face as she listened, her hands trembling uncontrollably. Sukai had been right. Her son hadn't chosen this. He had been cornered, broken, forced into silence. And now, Sukai too had been silenced. She closed the laptop, clutching it to her chest, sobbing. She finally understood the depth of Sukai's last words. His death wasn't just tragedy, it was a message, a warning, a demand for courage. As dawn crept in through the window, Menglong's mother sat upright, her eyes red but burning with a new fire. She whispered to herself, to her son, to Sukai, to the ghosts in the room, "I won't let them bury the truth."